Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. It's Monday in New York. This is Llorraine Neithardt, your host of Venus Unplugged, and what we are continuing to work with are the major arcana in the tarot cards. What we do here at Venus Unplugged is we explore the archetypal Venus and how she operates in our life, and she is in everything. And working with psyche, because without psyche, you can neither know nor believe. And over the weekend, I was thinking, and it hit me, as things can and will hit all of us. It was like, wow, Venus was the one in the story of Eros and Psyche. Venus was the one that initiated Psyche. So the principle of love and beauty trained Psyche, challenged her, gave her tasks to overcome. So love does that. It gives us the task to see if we're worthy of love. And it's not just the zhuzh feeling good love. There's many, many kinds of love. We only have the one four-letter word in our language of English, but there are many, many kinds of love. And what we work with here is all that energy that is infused through myth, through story, through dreams, and for the last number of weeks, the tarot. So today we look at the Star card. Right now, that is a marvelous, marvelous card. And for those that the last few weeks we did the Tower, and when the Tower comes into our life for a moment or a week or however long it wishes, everything blows up. But it blows up for the greater good. It's like, don't need this anymore. So we can cooperate by cleaning out closets or changing furniture around or letting go of items or people or situations that we no longer need. We can disengage. And then every time now, and anytime you try to make any change, just watch how prevalent it keeps coming back. It was like, boy, this thing won't go away. But we keep trying. And we let go. So, or the Tower comes in and throws us up and out and from the Tower, and what is left from the being blown up, or disappointed, or disillusioned. Most of the time, it is our disappointments are usually that we're disillusioned. We believed one thing only to find out that is no longer true. There's an old saying, what we loved in our teens, we don't love in our 20s. Well, that happens for every age. So the meaning of this particular major arcana, and as I said, we can use these cards to meditate on, to guide us, to give us an image of what we're going for, because sometimes we can have a feeling, but we don't have an image. So we can use this visual aid for what it is we're trying to be in relationship to. Because in truth, all of this is happening all of the time. Particularly, when we're on the road to the alchemical road of individuation, becoming our individual self as the divine designed. Not what we were told, not what we were born into, but that true individual self. So one of the meanings of the tarot, it's to follow your own star, or to find your star, which means to meditate, on your own nature. Now, for those of you that are in astrology, find somebody who can do the conception chart. That's the day you were conceived, which is more your DNA, and your natal chart is your destiny, how you're going to use that. So it's very interesting to see your conception date. Pretty powerful stuff. So part of this star, and it is the great secret of the true self, will be revealed little by little, sometimes very rudely. It's like time to wake up, no more please, if, and doubts. It just collapses, and we can't understand what we've done wrong. We haven't done anything wrong. Stand still, observe it, and realize, actually, I'm still standing. I'm still questioning. And let me see what I've got left over here. What's left of my life that's really of value? So that's the great secret, in the key to your creative powers. And the answer to your questions. Make sure it's a worthwhile question. Not, why me, dear God? That's not a question, that's a whine. So for the inspiration, and we can be inspired by just looking at the night sky, certainly, or by looking at the tarot card of the star, and this great mystery that the star card holds for us. It helps you attune to your true quest, or in other words, your true quest is beginning. Now, there are times we can get anxious, like, I don't know, something feels like it's going to happen. Breathe into that. Try not to be anxious about it, because that's anticipatory anxiety. And psyche, remember, we can't get anywhere without psyche, so we need to have good manners of how to approach her. Just try to be still. And in that stillness, suddenly, you'll know something. Now, very often, when we first get to know something, we can't even speak about it because it sounds so tinny, or it can sound so flat, doesn't have the same power or force or brightness or diamond, the diamond body, the star body. So we sit with it. We're still with it. We don't speak of it. There's a saying, if you can't tell a wise man, don't tell anyone. Because if people don't understand, they'll either mock it or become envious of it, or it's certainly not mirror the energy we need. Keep the star. Notice the stars just come out at night, and the stars come out of what? Darkness. You're not going to see your star in blinding light, or the blinding light of the ego. Now, we need the ego not to rule, but to be intermediary between the self and psyche. That's the one that gives us the information. Very often it thinks it's God, and then, in the second adulthood, we realize, nope, that's not working. The ego is not going to give me. The ego is great for the first half of life because it gets us into the world. It shows us laws in the world and how to survive and raise children and pay mortgages and do all that kind of stuff, if we accept that assignment. But it is the self and the soul in the second half of life that begin to demand our attention. So when the star arrives, or when we look at the star or meditate on the star or carry it around with us to remind us what we need to feel, this is self-reflection. And so that you can see the truth by the light of your own star. In self-reflection, there really is no ego to say, oh, what a good person or awful person I am. We go to those extremes only when we're just in relationship with ego. But when we are reflecting, remember, self-reflection, we see it from another light. Just like envy is destroyed, or at least seen through through reflection. We can't look at envy straight on. We'll freak, if not be harmed, but through reflection. Where did I get hit with envy in the last 24 hours? The image will come up immediately. And sometimes it's, where did I have envy in the last 24 hours? That's making me, feel out of sorts. So that's what reflection is. It is not a direct stare. projection. It's somewhat of a dimmed light. And then we can see the opposites or the shadow and the light. So that's the knowledge that one needs to allow to happen for this type of self-expression. And knowing yourself, not the one you're told and taught, but the one you're struggling to remember, you then can begin to trust yourself. And therefore, you kind of can moderate and modify your actions according to the dictates of your own conscience. There are times when you realize, that actually doesn't bother me. People can go do whatever they want. That's none of my business. The old metaphysical saying, what you think of me is none of my business. And it isn't. Because it can be projection. No, they can be picking up. I mean, it's good if one can, if somebody kind of really attacks you for no particular reason or for a known reason, but the intense of the attack, it's like, wow, man, that was a little overkill, don't you think? There will come a time when you'll be able to ask yourself, with love and with wisdom, is there any truth in what that person is saying or that attack? But we're calm about it because we're just reflecting. Because if it's a way, if the enemy or the stranger or the person who wants to destroy you or hurt you in that particular moment, they may have like a little inkling of some truth that you maybe believe is true, or maybe you didn't grow out of that, or maybe you didn't forgive yourself of something. And then we realize, like, wow, if I look at it that way, I can see there's a little bit of truth in that. Is that my whole truth? No. You don't get so upset. As a matter of fact, you can use it as a way, like, wow, maybe they picked up something long forgotten or unfinished, or actually it's a piece of gold that's buried so deep that I don't even see it. But that takes a lot of consciousness to do that. And that's hopefully what we're going for, and that takes a lot of love. Self-love. Not the kind of narcissism, but the kind that really knows, I want to be whole. I want to individuate. Now, that comes with a warning. When you decide or are chosen to become whole or individuate, so much begins to happen that you never thought. But each dynamic or each insight or each acting out, and also to be able to have the courage to say, where did I project that stuff and harm that person? So often when there's anger, which is, part of the human condition, but when it's that killing rage, it's cold, real cold. And then we ghost people, or people ghost us. So when a person is ghosted, they just, you're done, you're finished, you're dead. Usually with no explanation. There are times, though, you must ghost a person because to give them an explanation is to only engage. If they don't know their own offense, you do not have to be their teacher. You can make a gracious adieu if you wish. Okay, but having to explain yourself like you're a child, because if somebody's doing you in, they're not going to see what they're up to. You know you. I want somebody else's opinion, which is an opinion usually comes from the negative animus or anima. because it's an opinion. It's a hearsay. It's not grown from your own self. I mean, imagine that the star, you're aligned with the star, and the star brings you that information. So when we're hearing our own song, because the stars make sounds, it's a key to health. So we can do that through meditation, active imagination, contemplation, studying your chart. Who is this? What is this natural intelligence that comes from the star? You know, what is this knowledge that you discover in your heart of hearts that can't be found outside? You know it's true. That's what counts. You don't have to prove it. You can quietly go about your knowing without having to explain it, because very often we want to explain something because we want to be understood. Now, if someone doesn't want to understand you, they're going to misinterpret that. If someone doesn't want to understand or take the time to reflect themselves, we forget the whole of the picture. And then one thing, or it appears like one thing, sometimes it's a build-up, and we forget to love. Now, when a person no longer loves you, stay away. There's nothing to figure out. I mean, I don't know how people decide they're not going to love you anymore. It's usually something gets triggered from the unconscious, and it's usually archetypal, so it has something to do with way back or deep within, but, you know, you become the scapegoat, or you scapegoat somebody. Now, we know we're in an archetypal seizure when we're upset about a situation or upset about a person, and we can't stop the voice. We can't stop the carrying on inside. When we can't stop, we are archetypally possessed. It's not even free will. So all you can do in that moment is just go like, okay, I'm in a seizure. This thing is just, you know, this gerbil inside my head has gone completely insane, is going around and around. But I know it's not the entire truth. This is what the archetype sounds like. Now remember, archetypes can't change their stripes. Aphrodite is Aphrodite. Hera is Hera. Zeus is Zeus. They are archetypal patterns. They're the gods at the center of the archetypal patterning. Zeus cannot suddenly become faithful. That's not its nature or his nature. Hera is not suddenly going to become loving and free like Aphrodite. She stands for the family and power and respect and the power of the throne. Aphrodite could care less about thrones. She'll swim the ocean and she'll laugh and she'll seduce and create. She'll bring in the healing through laughter. Completely different energies. One is not better than the other, but you are each favored by one. So for those of you that are into the gods and goddesses and the archetypes in that way, there was one wonderful book. It was called The Goddesses Within by Woogler, Woogler, probably one of the best books on the archetypal forces, and explains them and compares them. So we have all of them in us, but we're definitely ruled by one or the other. I need not mention which mine is, because it's obviously Venus. Wherever there can be beauty, that's where I go, or that's what I look at. I can walk in and something can be an absolute disaster, and my mind and my heart immediately begins to kind of redesign it, rework it, re-see it, or see where the boo-boo is. So how can the beauty be restored? That's my natural inclination. So you'll have natural inclinations if you're a hierotype. You want the law and order. You want that faithfulness in marriage or in whatever contract it is. And if it's not carried out, that Hera is going to rip that person apart. You don't want to be on the bad side of Hera. Well, actually, any of the goddesses. Aphrodite has some doozies that she pulls. But that's the rage. So we want to learn to follow, because the star is the eternal light. Now, eternity is beyond the heavens. And that's where we want to move towards, like bypass heaven and hell. Just go for eternity. That's what the Gnostics say, which I think is startling and marvelous. So we learn by turning the eye of your soul from the contemplation of appearances to the vision of reality. And you learn that you can and you must follow your own star. It's the only true right you have, not somebody else's star. It's not yours. Yours. And each star is bright and profound. So through knowledge, and as again, without Psyche, so we want to always be able to thank Psyche for giving us the dreams and the guidance. That's another thing. The dreams are a way that the stars speak to us. And through this knowledge, all things except I'm not quite awake yet, exist upon earth, and they're brought to perfection. So when you're experiencing cosmic inspiration, the wow moment, or the awesome moment, or the awe-inspiring moment, you're in the presence of divinity. But remain balanced. Say, wow. Okay, but contain. Don't float off. Don't jump with it. Don't ride the star. Allow it to kind of like move through you. Now, it's also a symbol of Christ consciousness. That love that is that archetypal love of Eros. Well, Christ is an Eros figure. So in most of the tarot, there's a woman and she's pouring water, 2 jugs of water, which is intelligence, which is it's adding libido to our lives. Libido is the living force of our life. We pour that in. In the Aquarian deck, which is the deck I use, it's actually a peacock, and that's one of the symbols of alchemy, because the peacock in myth is said to be able to eat the poisonous snake or be poisoned by the snake and turn that poison, transform that poison into the color of its plumage. So I guess we could also see that as a rainbow. And there's something called the healing poisons in astrology. In alchemy. And the healing poisons are the things that they seem to wound us first. Like mercury can be, or Hermes in alchemy can be a healing poison. It can be a communication that just freaks us out and we're poisoned by it. But then when we reflect and we call on our star and we ask, okay, let me have the strength to be able to see, because my ignorance is really got a hold of me. Ignorance means that which I've ignored. because the star gives us hope. And without hope, and certainly without faith, nothing really counts. So the stars, or the great star's sudden appearance in the sky suddenly suggests a new vision of wholeness that has risen from the depths and will soon be available to consciousness. So in the Tarot card in the Aquarian deck, there's this magnificent kind of peacock looking up at the star, and to the right of it is this dark black hole, all right? So that's kind of like out of the shadow, out of one's unknowing. There is a substance that's going to connect you, and that is true in any, I'm pushing Morgana, my little kitten. First her name was Fata Morgana. She didn't like that. Then she liked Morgana Banana. But now I'm going to call her Morgana Mayhem, because I have never seen an animal get in so much mischief as this one, which is why I adore her. So what can you do? Plus she's a Gemini. She's going to get into mischief. So Jung's concept of individuation, which means wholeness, is similar to that alchemical point of view, or what is called the philosopher's stone. And in the alchemical texts, which have very similar configurations to the giant fixed stars, which depict the process of individuation or enlightenment, and they revolve around the 7 planets representing the 7 stages of this process. And the alchemists call this process the great work, for they believe that the priceless philosopher's stone or philosopher's gold could be achieved by man's own labor. So it's different in the story of in the Christian idea of salvation. We're made whole by the grace of God. And it was the alchemist's central idea that not only humanity, but all of nature was imbued with this divine spirit, and that it was man's chief task to free the spirit, thus imprisoned in matter. This is why spirit and matter are one. And if you think of it, organic, natural substances that we value, and gold and diamonds and oil and all that, is in the earth. Which is why money is feminine. The symbol of money, mater, matter, is feminine. That's its original image. Of course, it's been transformed due to ignorance. But it is a feminine principle. So the alchemists believed that by engaging, in the great work, man's own spirit would be freed. And they saw that the redemption of man was the byproduct of this lifelong labor rather than its goal. This was the lonely task to be practiced in solitude or with one devout partner of the opposite sex. They felt that the reunion of the Godhead could never be achieved in mass, but could only take place within each individual as a result of his own dedicated effort. This is basically the principles of what Carl Jung is talking about, your individuation process, working with your dreams, and learning a whole new language. So take that star card out and look at it, or look at your star at night, or buy a star, and then where you can have a star named, and you can find it in the heavens and look at it. I always like to give that as a birthday gift. Or if somebody has passed over, I like to give a star where they can be met. So the picture of the stars, are just the meaning of it is just endless. But take out that star, direct your attention to the heavens, and make that connection to the heavenly bodies, because it's a twin theme. And in that connection, you're going to start to feel something. And keep it to yourself. Work alone. be yakking about it until you really know it. And then when you really know it, there's no need to share it. You know, I mean, we need to take classes and discover things and work with things, and we need our mentors. We need all of that, absolutely, because the mentor is the person who's been there, so they know if you're going to make and sometimes they have to let you collapse so that you have the experience, but they're not going to let you fall through the middle of the earth. So that's it. So next week we are going to do, and yet another, what are we going to do next week? We're going to do the moon, Maiden or Menace. So download this or go on my website, LorraineNeithardt.com. You can download it there, or Facebook, it'll be on there, or iTunes. Download them all and listen to them whenever you can, because it's good stuff. We need to be reminded of what it's all and could be about. So till next week, follow your star. Bye-bye.
Napa know-how.
A Napa guy knows more isn't always better, unless we're talking about full-size vans. These beasts do more than get you from A to B. They have so much space a man can live in it. With shag carpeting, waterbed, and a sweet lava lamp, these mobile abodes have all the comforts of home. With quality parts and plenty of Napa know-how, you can keep the original tiny house running longer, stronger. That's Napa know-how.
Napa know-how.